To start off, what we want to take a look at is becoming a more efficient PMRS user or the e-builder system user with the PMRS system here. So when you first log into eBuilder, you're going to be brought to the My Home page. Up here at the top, you'll notice that I am on the My Home page because the My Home tab is a different color than all of the other tabs up here. All of these tabs up here are considered the global tabs. And what we mean by global tabs at eBuilder is essentially, think of eBuilder as looking at your entire program, projects, program from a 30,000 foot view, and you drill down to exactly what you're looking for. And so the 30,000 foot view, the beginning, is up here at the top where we're stating are the global tabs. So these are the main modules in eBuilder that you have access to based on your roles and permissions within eBuilder. So these global tabs up here, for instance, if I click on the projects tab, I'm going to see every single project that I have access to. So this is my 30,000 foot view. I'm not getting a whole lot of details about particular projects, but I at least see a few details about the project. And if I wanted to know a little bit more, I'm going to drill down into the project that I'm looking for. So if I'm looking at this Sharks Crossing, this is a hyperlink. Everything that is blue within eBuilder is a hyperlink that you can click in and drill down to see more information. So my 30,000 foot view, my global tabs up here, will get me to my next level to where I can drill down into more information that I'm looking for. Now there's some tips and tricks, some shortcuts along the way that I'll point out. Not going to be able to point out all of them, but you'll find those shortcuts and tips and tricks as you use eBuilder more often. But I'm going to jump back to my Home tab. And so the My Home tab, think of it as your digital to-do list. And so when you first log into eBuilder and you're brought to the My Home tab, this should give you an overview of all of the items that you are responsible for. If there is an item in a section, or what we call a widget, then you have been deemed responsible or need to take some sort of action on that item. So eBuilder works as what we call a ball in court system. So think of the My Home page as the court, and each individual item in your widgets, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, is basically the ball. So if the ball is in your court, you have something to do with that item, whether it's add a comment on the item, or review the item, or approve the item, or forward the item on, or revise the item. Some type of action from you needs to be done on an item if you see it on this main page. So there are multiple what we call widgets on this page. You've got a widget for your announcements over here on the left-hand side. These are announcements that are entered by the eBuilder admins at NJDOT, and every user in eBuilder can see these announcements. So if you're wanting to request an announcement be made on this screen, and that announcement is not privy to all of the users, including those that are external to NJDOT, if you don't want that information privy to them, then this announcement section is not a good place for that particular announcement. You've got an events widget. This is not used a lot actually in eBuilder by a lot of the clients. These are events that you have scheduled in eBuilder using the eBuilder calendar module. So if you create an event or a training session or a meeting in eBuilder in the calendars module, that event or those events would show up in this box here. But as I mentioned before, this is not used a lot by many clients. Your recent pages. So this is a list of the most recent pages that you've been to in eBuilder. So you can jump back and forth to those pages quickly without doing what I did earlier, doing the 30,000 foot view, going to the module, then finding the project, and drilling down into that, so on and so forth. You can jump back and forth on your most recent pages. The quick add section, this is for, these are the processes and forms that you use the most. Everybody's quick add section will look different. So based on the processes that you use the most or forms that you fill out the most, they will be listed here to where you can quickly start one of these processes or start a form instead of, again, going through the entire procedure of going to the project, going to the processes module of the project, clicking the start process button, and then choosing the process. Instead, to save those 5 clicks, you just got to click once here. And these are our main widgets here. Each section points to a different module in eBuilder. So the My Processes section, these are all the processes that you have an action to take on. So as we can see, I'm responsible for one process here. It's on the Alex test project. It is the CACPC process, instance number 8. We can see what the subject is, what step it's in. If it had a due date, it would be listed here. A question would, if a comment was requested by you or for you, then it would be listed here. And we'll take a look at this in just a little bit. And then you've got a section for my forms, my timesheets, my scheduled tasks, my submittals, so on and so forth. So if you have not used eBuilder in the past 4 or 5 months, the My Home screen may look different to you. The reason it looks different is because we had an update several months ago to where we're able to actually edit the information and the sections on this home page. So this used to actually just be called the home page or the home tab, but now it's called My Home tab because you can now customize your view here in eBuilder. And when you customize it, you're only changing it for you. So if you change something on this My Home tab, that only affects your instance of eBuilder. It does not affect anybody else's. Same thing for the eBuilder admins. If the admins change something, it does not affect everybody else's view. So if we are going to customize this home screen, as I mentioned, each of these is a different widget. And so in my top right of the screen here where it says Edit My Home, if I click on that option there, what's going to happen is I'm going to get an Edit My Home panel pop up here on the right hand side. And there are 2 sections, the main panel widgets and the left side panel widgets. The main panel widgets are these in the center here, my processes, my forms, my timesheets. And the left side is referring to these over here, announcements, events, recent pages. And the order that these are in on this side are also the order that they're going to be displayed on both of your screen here. Do I have a question? Okay. So as we can see, my processes, my forms, all of these are actually being viewed at the moment. So they're actually turned on, and I can see that they're turned on because my little switch here is actually turned on. So if I don't need every one of these items here, widgets taking up space on my screen, I can remove the ones I don't need. So if I don't need the My Items Pending Approval, which is tied to the cost module for manual approval of cost items, NJDOT actually approves all of their cost items using processes. So this section would not be used. The My Quarantine Spam, whether you have access to it or not, this is based on, since eBuilder has the ability to have documents and emails and attachments sent directly to eBuilder, there's obviously potential for spam, phishing, things of that nature. So eBuilder will flag those emails that come in and store them in the My Quarantine Spam section. But if you don't have access to that in a permissions form, then we can obviously hide those as well. Same thing with my scheduled tasks, my timesheets, if you don't use timesheets, my forms, if you don't use forms. So if My Quarantine Spam, I don't want that being shown on my homepage, I can simply turn that switch off. And now my quarantine spam is not listed. Same thing for My Items Pending Approval. I don't need that. Maybe the My Forms widget, which is currently under My Processes, I don't get that many forms, and the timesheets is more important to me in order of listing on here my priorities. So I can actually move my timesheets to right below My Processes just by clicking these two sets of ellipses and dragging it to where I want it to go. Same thing for any of these widgets. If I want to move them to a specific location, I can do all of that from this panel here. Same thing for the left side panel. My announcements, I cannot turn off. Those will always be here. But if we do not use events, I can simply turn those off. Or if I like to use the events as keeping up with my date, I put the events above the announcements here, or move it all the way down to the bottom. Same thing as the options above. And once these are automatically saved, once you move them, they're not gone forever. So if I want to turn back on My Items Pending Approval, I can just simply click that trigger and put it where I need it to go. So once I've adjusted that, I can close that panel, and my home page is customized to my view. Now, looking at, for instance, My Processes section, notice that there are column headers up here at the top. So we can actually adjust these column headers. So if I wanted either additional column headers shown on this display, or I want to put them in, say, a different order, this view, I can do all of that from the My Home page as well. What I'll need to do, instead of clicking the Edit My Home option, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the widget itself, and in the top right of every widget, there's these three ellipses that state More. So if I click on that, notice I have an option for columns. I can remove this widget. I can even move this widget down or up from these three ellipses, much like we can do in the Edit My Home page. The only thing that you can't do in the Edit My Home is update the columns. If we notice, the columns here has a caret pointing down. So if I click on that columns, what I can see are all of the available columns of information that I can bring over. The ones that are grayed out, project and instance, are permanent. We cannot turn those off, nor can we move them in a different order. They have to stay in the first two. However, all of the other columns that are available, as we can see here, date submitted, status, step age, submitted by company, all of that can be turned off or turned on, and they can be adjusted. The order can be adjusted. Now, turning them off and turning them on is kind of the easy part. It makes the most sense here. However, if I'm going to reorder the columns, that takes a little bit of manipulation. This is not a simple drag and drop the column to where I want it to be shown. Instead, I need to manipulate the turn off and turn on of the columns to actually move them around. So, for instance, if I wanted my project and instance column have to be here, but maybe I wanted date due in front of the subject. So in order to do that, what I would have to do is actually turn off the subject and the step. And the very first option that is checked after I do that will move up. So notice I unchecked subject and step and got date due checked here. If I click apply, notice that subject and step disappeared, and now my date due is right next to my instance. Now, if I want to bring back in subject and step, which I do because I want it after my date due, I have to go back into my more ellipses and bring those back in. So notice my requested comment is checked, but I want my subject and step to come after date due. So what I can do is come down, find my subject, and notice I want subject and step, but notice when I click on subject and step, these are in alphabetical order. When I click on those, notice that my step came up first and then my subject. That's because step was above subject at the time. And so, again, this is what I mean by kind of manipulating this a little bit to get it the way you want it, because it is not simple drag and drop. But if I want it to go instance, date due, subject, step, and then requested comment, I have to move everything above the subject, remove those, apply it, come back in. And then if I wanted my step next, since requested comment is above step, I have to select step first, apply, come back to more, and now I can bring in my requested comment and apply. So there's some manipulation that has to be done if you wanted these columns to be in a specific order. Now I just brought in 6 columns. You can bring in as many columns as you want that are available here and put them in any order that you want to. Just know it's going to take a little bit of manipulation to get it to exactly how you want it. Okay, so that's the My Home page. That's adjusting the widgets, turning them off, turning them on, adjusting the columns. When we're talking about the My Home screen, this tab right here with the 3 ellipses, if I click on that tab right there, this is going to show me a list of all of the available tabs that I have access to, and if I want them to be displayed up here at the top. So if you're like me and you see a lot of tabs, you can either get overwhelmed, or you want to click every single one of these tabs to see, what's within that module of that tab. But if I know I'm not going to use certain tabs, like for instance, if we're setting this up for somebody in the C-suite or an executive, they may not want access to the calendar or documents or contacts or anything like that. They just want the the bare minimum. Just give me, the dashboards and reports and projects or something like that. So if I click this 3 ellipses tab here, this gives me a list of all of the available tabs, which are all of the modules that we have access to. And all of the ones that are checked are the ones that are being displayed up here. So if I didn't want some of these tabs displayed, then I can pull the ones I don't want off just by simply unchecking them. So if I didn't want any of these tabs up here, they're just taking up way too much room. I can uncheck the ones that I don't want there, click save, and eBuilder will essentially hide those tabs. Now they're not gone for good. If I wanted to bring them back, I most certainly can just click the ellipses again and bring back the ones that I want, or simply select the all button to go ahead and select them all, click save, and they're all back in view here. Now, one thing, no, go ahead and answer this. No, we cannot move these tabs around. We cannot put them in a specific order. Whatever the order is listed here is the order that it's going to be in up at the top. Now, along with the global tabs up here, you may notice that when I'm in a project, in the project details specifically, you'll see, I've got forms, processes, documents, cost. And when I'm in a project, over here on the left-hand side, you may see the exact same options. You have forms, processes, documents, cost. This sometimes trips people up, newer users up, because they look exactly the same, but they have 2 different functionalities. So if we remember, up here is our global tabs. Think of the 30,000 foot view. And those down here on the left-hand side are from the project menu, which means they are project specific. Meaning if I click on the documents module from the project menu, I'm going to be shown just the documents for that project. So here's the folder structure and the documents within this particular project. If I clicked on the documents tab up here at the top, that's my 30,000 foot view. So I'm going to see all of the documents from every project that I have access to. So again, that sometimes trips people up at the newer users. So if we're looking for project specific information, we want to use our project menu. If we're going to the 30,000 foot view, I want access to everything at once so I can choose from the entire list to find what I need. Then I would use the global tabs, 30,000 foot view tabs up here at the top. So we'll move on to the next item, which is access delegation. So access delegation is actually a pretty cool feature in eBuilder. It's essentially saying, if I go on vacation, I know I'm going on PTO next week for the entire week. I don't want my work to essentially pile up. So I want to give somebody essentially signing authority or the authority to act on my behalf while I'm on PTO or I'm on vacation. So if I go on vacation next week, I can tell eBuilder, in my absence, I'm going to allow Vonija my signing authority. I'm delegating her as my signer to act on my behalf for all of the items that I'm responsible for. Now, when you grant somebody access to act on your behalf, you're essentially giving them the keys to your eBuilder instance where they can approve a step that's in a particular process. They can upload documents on your behalf. They're essentially, think about it as them logging in as you, to where they can do pretty much everything that you can do except change any details of your eBuilder instance. So they can't go in and change your password, or change your username, or request a new password for you, or anything like that. They're essentially only granted the ability to come into your eBuilder instance and act on your behalf to move processes forward, or make approvals or reviews or anything like that that are in your court. So the way we want to grant somebody access is located in the Setup tab, Setup Global tab. And just a quick tip for eBuilder, what I like to do, and you may notice them up here at the top, is I like to right click on a tab or a module that I'm going into, and then choose the Open Link in New Tab option. And when I do that, a new tab opens up here at the top. And the reason I like to do this is because I like to bounce around to different modules in eBuilder. And if I was, say, in my home tab here and I click Setup, I'm brought directly to the Setup screen. But if I wanted to jump back to my home to check something, I'd have to jump back to the My Home here, and I'd kind of lose where I was in the Setup tab. So I like to create multiple tabs up here at the top, just so I can jump back and forth within eBuilder into different sections. If you use multiple modules and multiple projects in eBuilder and you want to bounce back and forth, you obviously got the recent pages, but that stays on one tab here, when I can kind of quickly bounce back and forth, having these additional tabs up here at the top. So I opened a new tab for the Setup, and in the Setup tab, you've got your My Settings area. Depending on your permissions, you most likely do not have the Administration Tools section down here. You only have access to the My Settings. In the My Settings, since we're talking about access delegation, I'm going to go to my personal information. When I click on personal information, the subcategory access delegation is listed here. So I can click on access delegation. And when I click on that, this brings me up all of the information about access delegation. In eBuilder, 99% of every page starts with a filter. Of course, eBuilder loves tabs, so if there are multiple areas within that particular module, you'll see multiple tabs here. So this tab, Access Delegation Management, and then you've got Access Delegation History, which shows all of the history for all of the delegations that you've either requested or granted. But in our Access Delegation Management option, here's my filter here. Unless you're using access delegation a lot, you probably won't need to filter, because underneath the filter is the grid showing all of the current and previous access delegations that you've had. So as we can see in this grid here, I've currently got an active access showing that I've requested access to this particular user from this date to this date. Down below the grid, I've got two options. I can either grant access if I know I'm going on PTO next week. I can go ahead and set up my access delegation for when next week comes. Then eBuilder automatically grants access to the user that I choose. And so if I'm going to grant access, notice in my box here, I need to select a user. So I can filter the users by a particular role. Now, in order for me to delegate another eBuilder user to have my signing authority, they have to either have the same permissions or greater permissions than I have. Also, we can't do different companies. So if I work for Turner Construction and I'm not going to be able to make the mistake of granting the PM at Hewitt my delegation. So I have to, the options that I have to grant another user access to my signing authority, they have to be in the same role or greater. So we can filter by a particular role. If I'm in multiple roles and I want somebody of the same role to act on my behalf, I can filter by the role, or I can click this drop down menu here, which will show all of the users that I am able to grant access to. Now, again, this is based on permissions here. So what I would do is just find the user that I want to grant access to, find that user, and then I can set my access duration. So the start date and the start time of this delegation. So if they're going to start Monday morning at 9 a.m., having my signing authority, then I can click my calendar, select Monday the 8th, my time, make it 9 a.m. until I get back the following Monday, or maybe I only want them to have access until Friday at 5, next Friday at 5. So I find the end date. So it's going to end, their delegation is going to end Friday at 5 p.m. So they have signature authority or to act on my behalf next week from Monday at 9 a.m. until Friday at 5 p.m. And what I would do is simply click the grant button, either click this grant button here or this grant button here. They do the same. I can add notes if I wanted to for that particular user. And so once I grant it, then that user will receive an email notification from eBuilder stating that this user has granted you access delegation between this date and this date. When you grant somebody access and they accept it, then the way we'll know that I have access to somebody else is either number one, come to this access delegation section, and I can look in my grid to see all of my active delegations. But the fastest way is actually up here under the username dropdown. So if I click this username dropdown, what I'm going to see is, obviously I've got a link to my setup, I've got a link to logging out, but in between there, I have a list of all of the users that I have access to act on their behalf. So I currently have access to this AE May. So when AE May goes on vacation, I have access to them. Their name will pop up here once the date starts, and I'm able to switch to their eBuilder instance, essentially. So I can switch to act on their behalf, and I'll do that in just a second here. But wanted to show also, so we've got grant access. I know I'm going out of town next week, so I'm going to go ahead and pre-plan and grant somebody access on my behalf. Or the other option is, say, Vonija is going out of town and she had Mai Tais on her mind, so she just left without granting anybody access to sign on her behalf. So what I can do if I'm going to act on her behalf, or I'm going to want to act on her behalf while she's away, is I can choose the request access option. And when I choose the request access option, it's essentially the same thing, where I can either filter by a particular role, or I get a list of all of the users who I have access to request their delegation. So I can select one, I can select multiple. This is a multi-select box. These are all of the available users. The ones that I want to request access from needs to be moved to this selected box over here. So if I find a particular user, we'll say this one. So I select the user, click my over arrow, and that user hops in this box here. So everybody in this box here, when I go to request, will get a email notification stating this user has requested access to your account. And in that email, you're able to actually accept directly from that email, as long as you have internet access, because eBuilder works off of internet access. So I can request request signing access from Vanija here. I can go ahead and set the access duration. So for the week she's gone, start date, end date, start time, end time, and then click request. Vanija would receive an email, and she can grant access in between those Mai Tai sips on the beach there. So 2 ways to get access delegation. You can grant it to somebody directly, or you can request it from another user, all from this page here. And so what I'm going to do, so if I requested access to this AE May user, they've granted it to me. When I'm in eBuilder, I'm performing my work, maybe a certain time of day, I go in and I check on this AE May user's account. So what I would do is come up to my drop-down list, find AE May, and when I click on that user, notice my username up here has changed. And what this is showing me is essentially I'm in AE May's eBuilder instance. And so up here it says welcome AE. Under my processes, these are all of the processes in AE May's port that I can now act on for AE. I'm not acting on any of these as myself. I'm actually acting on this as AE. And so if I need to move a particular process forward, I can go into that process and I can move that process forward, take an action based on as if I was this AE May. Now notice if I go to setup here for AE May, notice under my membership, my preferences, I don't have that personal information section. So eBuilder removes that, because even though I've been granted access to AE May's eBuilder account under signature authority, I do not have the authority to change any of their personal information or anything within their eBuilder system. And to jump back to my other user, I just simply click the drop down menu, and here's my other user here. I just select them, and now eBuilder brings me back into my account where I'm acting as myself. Okay. Any questions about access delegation? Fantastic. So the next part that we're going to talk about is searching through the eBuilder PMRS instance here. So two things that I want to show, searching for projects and searching for documents within a project. So the first thing, since this is a project management program, I want to be able to access all of the projects that I have access to. So mentioned it before. If I click on the projects tab up here at the top, this is the projects module. So this shows me every single project that I have access to. Obviously, if I'm a participant on a particular project, then I'll see them here. If I'm a participant on a bunch of projects, which most of us are, because we do have view access to the majority of processes or projects that are already in eBuilder. So my list can get very big here. So instead of scrolling down to try and find a particular project, what I can do is there's a drop-down menu over here. If I click this drop-down menu, again, here's every single project that I have access to in a drop-down list. Notice that I have access to almost 8,000 projects. That would be a lot of scrolling to find a particular project. So what this drop-down doubles as is a quick search bar. So notice that the project ID and the project name are listed here in this drop-down. Those are the two columns. So as long as I know some of either the project ID or the project name, what I can do is start typing in either the project name or project ID, and eBuilder will begin filtering for whatever I type in here. So if I'm looking for, 2007 project, I can start typing in 2007, and eBuilder is going to filter for every single project that either has 2007 in the project ID or 2007 somewhere in the project name. So the nice thing about this is it doesn't have to start, whatever you type in here, the project name doesn't have to start with whatever you type in here, as long as whatever is in here is somewhere within either the project ID or the project name. So if I type in ATL, then as long as somewhere in the project name or project ID, ATL is listed, then eBuilder is going to filter for those projects. So that's a quick way to jump to a particular project or search for a particular project. Let's say that I want to filter for this training project 01. So if I just start typing in training, there's a ton of projects with the word training in them. So obviously to filter more, I've got to add more of the project name in there. So if I'm looking for training project 01, here it is. I had to type in training project to filter it down enough to find training project 01. And I can select that project from that drop-down menu. And when I do that, I'm brought to the project details for that project. And one thing I want to point out here is, as we can see up here at the top, again, these are our global tabs. Now, speaking of documents, every single project in the eBuilder system should have, well, I should say 99% of all projects within the eBuilder system will have the exact same folder structure. The names will be exactly the same. The order that the document folders are in will be exactly the same on every single project. And the reason that is for consistency. That means I can go into 12 different projects, and every single one of those projects will have the exact same folder structure, folder name, same permissions, all that good stuff for every single one of those projects. So if I know that all of my planning documents, if I'm looking for drawing plans, all 12 of those projects, I know I can go into the planning folder and then find the drawing plan subfolder and locate those drawing plans. That's going to be the same exact folder and folder structure on every single project for consistency. But let's say that I want to locate a specific document. Maybe somebody came in and said, yep, I uploaded a document, but I can't remember what folder I put it in. Or somebody says, I uploaded the document and you go to the folder that you expect it to be in, but it's not there. But they say, yes, I did. So maybe I need to search for that particular document. And so there are a couple of ways to search for a document. And the first way is actually the most generic and not the recommended way. It will work sometimes, but not all the time, and I'll explain why. So, for instance, I'm looking for a document that's titled "Have Fun." Somebody told me that they uploaded the document to, this new documents folder, but I don't see that document here. Maybe I can't get a hold of them or they're not answering me. So I'm going to just check and see if they actually did upload that document. Maybe they just uploaded it to the wrong folder. So what I can do is up here at the top, there's a quick search bar. Now I say this is not recommended, or I should say it's not the best way to search for certain items, because this will actually search everywhere in eBuilder, has the ability to search everywhere in eBuilder. So if you're not in a specific project, then when you use this quick search bar, it's going to search everywhere in eBuilder. So if you're searching for invoice number 4 everywhere in eBuilder, so out of 8,000 projects, there's probably going to be multiple invoice number 4s somewhere within eBuilder. That's not, gonna help us very much. So if I'm looking for a particular document or a file within, say, this project here, then my quick search bar is a little more effective. So I said that I'm going to look for Have Fun. I know there's a document, or somebody said they uploaded a document called Have Fun somewhere in here. Instead of searching through every single folder looking for it, while I'm in the project, I'll type in what I know about the file name. Either there's one word I know or multiple words that I know. I can enter it here and click the search icon. When I do that, I'm brought up the search results. And as we can see down here, first of all, there's a note. There are no matching records in folders. So what that means is there's no folder name titled Have Fun. But when I click that search bar, eBuilder shows that I'm searching for Have Fun. I'm limiting the search to this training project because that's the project that I was in when I searched up here. And since I was in the documents module of that project, eBuilder already clicked the documents module to search in. However, I can search in multiple areas within that project. I can search in processes, the projects, the cost information, the bidding information. I can select multiple places to search for whatever I'm looking for here. And of course, there's other custom fields and filters listed here if I have a lot of files with the same general name. But when I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I get my results. So here in my results, this grid here, I got one result. It's in this project that I'm in. It shows the location. So this is the folder breadcrumbs, documents, financial, invoice. So these are the folder breadcrumbs there. And I see the file name of Have Fun. Now this is a hyperlink here. So if I wanted to view this folder or view this file, I can simply click that hyperlink and eBuilder will populate that or bring up that file. Now, there are multiple folder structures, as I mentioned, and based on whether you're construction, local aid. If I go back to my folder structure here, so under construction, there's a folder for local aid. And notice that next to local aid, there's a plus sign. That means there are subfolders within this folder here. So if I click on that plus sign, I see that from local aid, there's invoices associated with local aid. And notice that I've got a plus sign as well. So there's sub folders here. And so when it comes to local aid invoices, there are several subfolders located under that. Same thing with project assignments. There's miscellaneous attachments, project assignments for this local aid section underneath the local aid. There. Okay. Now I mentioned up here is good, but it's not super effective, because let's say I'm going to go into my documents here, and just for our purposes, look at this file here. It's called rear elevation. Obviously, this file is in this project associated with this folder, rear elevation. If I come up here to my search bar and I type in rear elevation and click search, notice I don't get any matches. There are no matching records in anywhere in the documents or folders that eBuilder can find. However, I know that's not true because I see that document right here in front of my face. Now, why is this document not showing up in that list, but that Have Fun document was in that list? So here's that Have Fun document. That's in my folder structure for this project. Why is the rear elevation one not? That is because the rear elevation file was not uploaded directly to the documents module, meaning this rear elevation file was actually uploaded within a process, and then the process placed this file into this folder for this project. And we'll talk about uploading files through processes in a little bit. But because this was not uploaded manually to this folder or this project, eBuilder seems to not be able to find it. Now, I can't explain why, or I can't get a reason from anybody why I can't see this document when it's clearly in here. The only thing that I can surmise or get an answer to is it's because the file was not uploaded directly into the documents module here. Since it was uploaded through a process, I guess the tables of data don't link together in the background to match up with what's in this quick search bar. And so that's why I kind of say the quick search bar is good to a point, but it's not super effective for finding every single document. What I would recommend is actually creating a report or running a report, a documents type of report for a particular document that you're looking for. And so if I go to my reports tab, we're not going to build a report or anything like that, but just to show you kind of quickly, if I go to my reports tab, eBuilder, when we first come on site and basically start implementing the eBuilder system at NJDOT, we give you, I think it's about 120 different generic reports, basically reports that kind of get you started. So you're not having to create all of your reports from scratch. We kind of get you started, give you a little push. And so when I go into my reports tab, if I have access to the document management folder, I have a a report here for document log. I also have a lot of different document reports. I can also create my own report from the documents module. However, this is a good start here where if I click on the document log report, just click on the name, eBuilder is going to try and run that report. Now, this one has a filter in it that says I must select a project from the above list, meaning this drop-down list here. So I have to select a project first to pull that document log report. So I'm going to find that training project that I was just at, select that training project, and eBuilder will run that report. So here's the document log for this training project. So it shows obviously the project name, the date uploaded, the file name. Here's that rear elevation that I didn't see in the quick search bar. But since I ran a report, eBuilder runs a report based on the document log as it sits now, not how the document or file got into the documents module. So I can see that obviously I've got all of the documents that are located within that project. Now, if this is a big project, obviously could be thousands of documents here. And this report is just showing me every single document that's in there. But as we can see here, I'm filtering by just the project name. Again, not going to get into building a report, but I can edit this report to search for a specific file name instead of showing me everything. So I can edit this report by clicking the edit button. The report wizard will pop up in step 1. I'm going to jump to the very last step, which is specify filter. And in my specify filter, I can set my search rules here. So if I want to search for a specific file name, I can do that using these 3 columns here. The first column is selecting what area that I'm going to, or area or data field or type of information that I'm going to look up or filter by. It's broken up by different sections. So the bold here shows the section for project details. So here's all the project details information, project custom fields. Here's custom fields information. As I keep scrolling down, I'll see different sections. Since this is a document report, as I come down, I'll see document details. There's some custom fields that NJDOT created for documents, but I see under the document details, there's a option for file name. So if I select file name, I've got my operator here. So if I know exactly what the file name is, I can choose equals, or if I just know a word in the file name, I can use contain or starts with, has a value, whatever it may be. I'll just do contains, and I know, the file name is rear elevation. I know it at least has rear in it. So I can just type in rear if I needed. I can click run report. Since I have to select a project, I've got to do that again. I'll find my training project. And now my report shows I'm filtering by training project 01 and that the file name contains rear, and here's that file name, or here's that file, rear elevation. So even though the report may take a little bit longer, you get better results with a report rather than your quick search bar. But you do have two options there. So, you know, feel free to use your quick search bar up here, but don't trust it. You know, if you don't find the eBuilder says there's no results for that particular file name, I wouldn't 100% trust it, but I would trust a report that is run. Okay. Any questions on searching for a document or searching for a particular project? So let's move to the next section, which is processes. So processes are a big part of eBuilder and especially NJDOT. NJDOT has a lot of processes, actually a lot of complex processes, a lot of processes that are combined or intertwined with one another. So understanding processes in eBuilder is going to be a huge function that we'll need to understand. So a process in eBuilder at its core is just a pre-routed form. So the NJDOT admins would set up a workflow, which is essentially somebody fills out a form in a start step, and fills out a form and submits that form. And based on what was designed, eBuilder knows exactly where to send that quote form, or it's really just a lot of data fields, a lot of information. Where's that going to? eBuilder will send it to the specific role or wherever it needs to go automatically. So to understand the processes for this particular one, I'm going to go to my home page. And so there's a few ways to get to a particular process, starting from the beginning. Each time a process is sent to you, where you are the responsible person for that process, it's going to be in your court. You have some sort of action to take. You need to review it. You need to approve it. You need to revise it, whatever it may be. You have an action to take. So eBuilder will notify you via email that a process is in your court. And so try and find I'll show you an example of what one of those emails would look like here in just a second. But you would get notified by an email, and you can access that process or that step directly from the email. So I'll show you in just a second. The second way is to come in when you log into eBuilder. You're in your My Home page. Under My Processes, here are the process instances that I am responsible for. Right now, I'm just responsible for one. Using the My Home page links here, just to let you know, you can see that you've got a hyperlink for project and a hyperlink for the instance. This is the process instance. So this is the CACPC process number 8. So this is the 8th time the CACPC process has been run on this project. So these hyperlinks actually do two different things. What I would recommend is if you want to go into the process instance from this page, click on the process instance name and number here. So if I click on this hyperlink, eBuilder is going to open up that process instance in my step so I can view the information and be able to take an action. move it forward, send it back, whatever I need to do. The other hyperlink for project doesn't go directly to that instance. Instead, it's going to take you to the project that process is in, takes you to the processes instance of that project, and then just shows you the list of all of the processes that are here. Notice that we see CACPC 8 here, but it's within a list of process instances that are not all related to me. So from the My Home tab, I would always say best practices. If you want to go directly to the instance, click on the instance link instead of the project name. Okay. The other way of locating a process is through the project itself. So if I go into a particular project, go into the processes under the project menu. Now in the processes here, the one I'm looking at, not the processes up here in the global tab, because that's going to show me every single process that I have access to on every single project. Instead, I want just the processes for this particular project. So I'm in the project, I'm in the processes module. I mentioned earlier that the majority of pages in eBuilder have the filter up here at the top. So when you first come into the processes module of a project, this is the filter you would see when you first get there. You can adjust the filter. And the good thing is, once you adjust the filter, the next time you come into that project, into the processes module, eBuilder is going to remember that filter and give you those results. So the first filter option is to search in. And you've got 3 options here, 3 radio buttons. The first one is processes initiated by me. So that's an eBuilder term that basically says processes that I started. So if there's a process that I physically started and submitted, I can filter by those processes only. I can filter by processes in my court. So these are processes that I am responsible for. So in this project here, Training Project 01, it's currently filtered for processes in my court, and I'm not getting any results down here because there are no processes in my court. Now, if I went to the other project, I'm going to switch the filter back to how it would be. If I'm in this project and my filter is set for processes in my court, notice I do get a hit here for this particular process. This is in my court. I am responsible for it, so eBuilder is showing me those projects there. The other option is all processes. So whether I started the process, whether the process is in my court I'm responsible for, or whether it's a process where I'm somewhere in it. Either the process hasn't got to me yet, or it's already gone through my step. As long as I have access somewhere in that process, I can view the details of that process. So if I select all processes, my next option is the type of process. So it's a drop-down list. This drop-down list shows all of the processes that are currently on this project that I have access to. So whether I'm responsible for it, or there's a step coming up that has me in it, or there's a step that I've already reviewed and sent it forward. These are the processes that I'm able to either filter for specifically, or I can leave it at all processes, and eBuilder would show me every single process, pretty much all 5 of these processes and their instances in this grid here. We'll see that in just a second. Then we've got three statuses: draft, open, and finished. By default, draft and open are already checked. A process in a draft status means that I started a process, but I never submitted it. Maybe I started the process, started filling out some details, and then realized I don't have all the details, or somebody came into my office and pulled me away, so I need to save where I'm at that moment as a draft. And so I can save it as a draft and come back to it. Now, those that are in draft, only the person who started the process and saved it as draft is able to view those drafts. So if another PM started a process, saved it as a draft, I'm not going to be able to go in, even if I was a PM, I'm not allowed to go in and see their draft. I'm not allowed to see anybody's process that they submitted until it's actually submitted. The only drafts I can see are the processes that I started, began filling out, and saved it as a draft. I did not submit it yet. I saved it as a draft so I can come back to it. The open status means a process is in flight. So it's been submitted and it's currently going through the review and approval process. The finished status means a process obviously has finished. It's closed out, whether it was voided, rejected, approved, whatever it may be, that process is complete. So eBuilder actually gives you color cues based on the status of the process. So if I select finished here, I'm going to choose finish. So I want to look at all the processes. I'm not going to pick a specific one. I want every single process, whether it's in draft, open, or finished status. And I'm going to click filter. When I do that, I'm shown every single process that I have access to. Now notice that some are in blue and some are in gray. When they are blue, that is your visual cue that it is open. So it's currently in flight. If it's gray, that means it's currently finished. And the great thing about eBuilder, especially when processes are involved, is that even though it's finished, I can still click into one of the finished ones and see the details of that particular process. I can still view documents that are in there, the details of it, even though it's finished. In the open ones, even if I'm not the responsible person for this particular process in this step, I can still click on a particular process that is open and see the details of that particular process. I'm not able to move it forward or anything like that, but I can at least view the details. And as we'll see in just a little bit, I can add comments to a particular process that's currently in flight, even though I'm not responsible for it. But what I can do, if I do look at a process that is currently open, I've got a few options. Whether it's in my court or not, I can always see the history. So I've got 3 hyperlinks up here at the top. I can always see the history, where this process has been, who has done what to it, what day and time, even the data fields. What values have been added to the data fields? Have the data field values changed? I can view everything I've ever wanted to know about this process here. I can view the current actors. Who is the responsible person or persons for this particular process step? Now, this is a test project, so currently there are no actors, but we'll take a look at some that do have some actors in there. And then I've got the show workflow diagram. So this is the actual process flow diagram, workflow diagram, whatever, however you want to call it, of this process. So it shows the start step and the finish step, and then how the process gets from the start step to the finish step. It shows what step it's currently in using this blue frame. So we can see where this process has been and where this process has to go. I can see the workflow of every single process. I'm going to cancel out of that. In my list, my grid down here, obviously I see the process prefix and number. So this is the expenditure report process, and the number after is the instance or the number of times this process has been run on this particular project. So this expenditure report process has been run 2 times. This is the second time this process has been run on this particular project. The subject for that particular process instance, what step it's in, how long it's been in that step, using the step age. If there was a due date, it'd be listed here. The status. Now this status is different from this status. So this status up here just tells us whether the process is open or finished or in draft. This status tells us the status of the particular item of this process. So this particular expenditure report is in a submitted status. So this particular expenditure report is in a submitted status. However, the process, the expenditure process, is open. It means it's currently in flight. So there is a filter for statuses. So this is statuses that you will see here, and this is for the particular process instance. For this particular report, this report is in a submitted status. And so I mentioned there are color cues. So the blue is open, gray is finished, and draft is actually a copper color. And I'll show you that right here when we talk about starting a process. So if I'm going to start a new process, what I'm going to do is come to my processes, come to the project, come to the processes module. Up here in the top right is a start process button. I'll click that start process button, and I'm going to get a window with a list of every single process that I have access to start. Now, this is not every single process that I'm an actor on somewhere, or I have a step somewhere in the process. These are only processes that I have permissions to start. So here's my list of processes. Everybody's list would look different, but I simply find the process that I want to start. Say it was this lamp process. So I can click on the hyperlink of that process, and eBuilder will essentially launch that process. So this is the start step of this process. So in this start step, as I mentioned before, a process in eBuilder is a pre-routed form. So think of this as I'm filling out a form here. Every data field that has a red asterisk is a required field. So I fill out this form, essentially, and I can submit it. Now, if I say I want to save this, or choose a better process. So if I'm going to start a process, I'm just going to grab this one, for instance, just to show one thing here. So if I started this PLP process, maybe I don't have all my information here to fill out these data fields. So what I can do, instead of submitting it and starting the process, if I click Save Draft, when I click the Save Draft button, I'm going to get a note up here at the top where eBuilder says this draft has been saved successfully. So if I either exit out of this window or cancel from here, back to my list of processes, notice that I have a process now that is this copper or brownish color. This tells me that this process is in draft. So if I choose all processes again and have draft, open, and finish selected, here are my open processes, the ones in flight. Here are my closed processes, the ones that have already finished. And the copper shows me my draft, the ones that I started but had not submitted. Let's talk about documents in processes here. So let's say I need to upload a document. We'll say I'm this user. This process is in my court. So I'm going to click into this process, into this step, and I'm supposed to fill out all of this information. Now, when it comes to documents, in the process, if there is a document or a file that needs to be uploaded, you will see a file field similar to this. There'll be the file name or the data field name, and then you'll see a drag and drop file here, browse computer or browse eBuilder button. Now, if I've got my AASHTO exception file on my computer, I know exactly where it is. What I can do is open up that file from my file explorer, if it's on my hard drive somewhere, and I can simply grab that file, drag and drop it. Notice that this file, I'll come down here so we can see it. Notice that this file field turns yellow. Once it turns yellow, I can release my mouse and eBuilder will pop that file into that file field. Now I get this window here where it says to upload files. And what eBuilder is doing is it's verifying that that's a good file. Either the file's not open somewhere on your computer or it's not a corrupt file or something like that. It's verifying that it's a good document. If it is a good document, you'll get this green circle here. You'll also see this, which is a folder, the breadcrumbs of a particular folder. And this folder is talking about the project folder that this document will also be stored in. So this document, I uploaded it here to this process, so I can locate this file within this process, and eBuilder is automatically going to add that file to this folder here. And that's so if somebody who wants to view this file, if they don't have access to this particular process, but they have access to this folder, then that user can still view that document. They don't have to come into the process to view this document. So eBuilder is automatically storing a copy of this document within this folder here. Now the document is not in eBuilder yet. This is just a window verifying that it's a good file. The file is officially uploaded into eBuilder when I click this upload button. Now, if this is a bad file, the upload button will be grayed out and I'll only have to cancel. So let's say this was a bad file, I'll cancel it. Notice that the file is not in there. Now there's two other options here. So I knew exactly where the file was on my computer and that was already open. If that particular file on my computer was not open or that folder was not open, what I can do is click my browse computer button, just like you've probably done in the past on other sites, is be able to choose a particular file from your file explorer. eBuilder will open up that file explorer and you can choose that file. I cancel out of this. The other option is, say this document's already in eBuilder. I don't want to go find that document again and upload it here because it's already in eBuilder and I know where it is. So I can actually browse eBuilder. So if I click the browse eBuilder button, eBuilder is going to show me the folder structure that I have access to see. I can find that file from the folder structure. So wherever that file is, say it's right here. So I go to the actual folder, find the file, and I can select that file and click attach. And eBuilder will automatically attach that file to this file field here. So there's three ways to get a file into a process from the file field. Now, let's say the engineer's cost estimate already has a file in it. You can only upload one file to a data field, a file data field. So if I have this engineer's cost estimate in two different files, I'll either have to combine those two files into one file to upload it in here, or I can upload one of the files here, and then my second file, if I scroll all the way to the top, looking at these tabs up here, if I click on the Documents tab, I now have places where I can attach additional documents. So I can grab that second supporting document file. Say it's this one here, and I do the same thing. I just drag and drop into this section. eBuilder is going to verify that it's a good file. Once I see all green here, the reason we see this window instead of the other window we saw previously is because I can upload multiple files. So if I had a lot of files that I wanted to upload here, I can select multiple files, hold my control key down, and drag and drop those into there. Each file would have its own line. eBuilder would verify that each file is good using a green bar. Once it's good to go, eBuilder's verified that the files are all good. They're not corrupt. They're not still open somewhere. I get a done option or done button. I can click that done button, and now that file is located or available to be seen here. Now I can upload a bunch of documents into this section in the Documents tab, rather than just one file from a previous file data field. Okay, so that's uploading files. I'm going to go a little bit quicker so we can fill in the rest of this information. One thing is the comments. So in a particular comment or in a particular process, I can request a comment from somebody that's not in that process or not responsible for that process or that step. So for instance, if I'm in this particular process, let's say I've got this process here. To look at the current actors, currently there's 3 actors responsible for this step. More than likely, you'd only see maybe 1 actor responsible for it. But this is how you know who is responsible to move this step forward. So if it's not moving forward, you know exactly who to reach out to for reasons why it hadn't moved forward. But I want you to pay attention to this actor type where it says step actor, because say I'm the responsible actor for it, but I need to request a comment from somebody. I need somebody to comment on this particular certification of funds process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my comments tab. My comments tab is where all of the comments associated with this process are entered. Now, let's say I want to request a comment from somebody who's not on this process. In my comments here, I've got 2 options, request a comment or comment. My comment button just allows me to add a comment here, or I can request a comment from somebody. So if I click the request comment button, a window is going to pop up that kind of looks like an email. And I've got an option to select who I'm requesting a comment from. Now, this list here is a list of all of the users currently on this project. So I can select a user who's currently on this project. We'll say this one. Here's my selection box. So everybody in this box will receive a request for comment. So I can move multiple here. I can also enter an external user, somebody outside of eBuilder. So I can request a comment from an external user. And I can put in my subject, just like a typical email, and request a comment. When I request a comment, what's going to happen in my comments tab here, it's going to show this person requested a comment from this AE May. Now, if I was AE May, what I could do is I'm going to switch to my AE May. what just happened in the background is AE May just received an email. Here's what a notification email will look like. And so this email shows that a comment was added. For here to view details or take action, I can use my click here option. Now, notice I've got an FYI up here. I'm going to open up another email that I received as well. So I actually received 2 emails, and the reason I received 2 emails is because AE May is actually a user with my email address. So if I was the responsible actor, if I was AE May, I would receive an email with the title "Action Required." That is saying that Mayville has requested your comment on the following process and comment. And how I can do that, I can go directly from the email by clicking the click here button. Now, I also received a second one, but I think I saw a question in the chat that said, if I have delegated access to AE May, or AE May has delegated access to me, and a notification comes in, or something comes in for AE May, while I'm delegated their responsibility, I'm going to get this email. The previous email said action required, but this email says FYI. So I'll get an email, almost the same exact one, except this one's an FYI that says that eBuilder is letting you know that you have been delegated access to AE May, and somebody has requested AE May to comment on a particular process. And so I'm getting a notification as an FYI, because that means that since I'm delegated as their signer during this period, I can act on their behalf here. So I can use the click here option, and eBuilder would open up that particular process instance. They've requested a comment, so I can go to the comments tab and I can click comment and add my comment here. And add comment. And once I add that comment, then if I switch back to my other user and go back to that project, go back to that process instance, hadn't updated yet. Let me refresh. Oh, I know why I'm not seeing it, because I'm not the responsible actor on that particular process. But if I was the responsible actor on that process, I would see that comment. I'm in an admin role right now, so I would see that that comment if I was an actor on that step. Also, if I go to my AE May designator, answer the question beforehand, but if somebody requested a comment, I would see requested comment listed here. So this says I'm responsible for this particular process instance, but I am not the actual actor. I am somebody who has just requested a comment on. So if I look at this process instance in my current actors, notice my actor type is not step actor. It's actually requested comment. So that'll tell you what type of responsibility this one has. Notice I cannot move this process forward. I don't have an action here because I can only add a comment. Okay, so in our last 9 minutes, don't have time to go through creating views, but I wanted to go through a few general items. Number one, if you didn't receive an email from eBuilder, most likely you need to check your spam folder or junk folder because this comes from bounces at e-builder.net. And so if that email address is not whitelisted for you, those emails will go into your spam or junk folder. Or if you have a email filter set for all emails from eBuilder to go to a specific folder, that would be another reason you're not getting notifications. Your password for eBuilder is going to expire every 90 days automatically. So after every 90 days, you will have to reset your password. When you try to log into eBuilder, a new window will pop up that says you need to reset your password, and you'll just follow the prompts to reset the password. If you need to reset your password before 90 days, what you would do in your setup tab, you would come to your personal information and you've got just a change my password option. So you can click this change my password and eBuilder will send you a notification to change that password. That notification will look similar to this. Okay. Another way, if you can't log into eBuilder, if you're at this screen here and you forget your password, you've always got a forget your password option here. So I forgot my password, so eBuilder will send you a link to reset your password there. Move into the Q&A session for these last 5 or 6 minutes. Was there anything that anybody has a question on? I have not been monitoring the chat, so if there's any questions in the chat that we can answer in these next 5 or 6 minutes, we can do that now.
There are some questions around having a list of acronyms, just abbreviated. So we will distribute that list to everyone. And also, any other questions so far, what we have gone through, or anything that you would like us in the next 5 minutes to go through that would help you? I would like to make a mention of for local aid resolution submission and agreement execution process. That process is automatically created when a project makes it into PMRS, which means when you submit the application for municipal aid or any of those programs, after the submission, we do have an integration build that is run every night, which means so that it will get created in PMRS the next following day. And you will see that project and process associated. So the process LAAE, which stands for Local Aid Resolution Submission and Agreement Execution Process, where you will need to submit the resolution, application resolution within 30 days of submission of your application. That process is automatically created. Please search for that process within the project, how David had earlier walked us through. So you don't need to create, again, another LAAE process. So just it will be there ready for you to pick up and then submit the resolution. How do you get access to someone that can make changes and upload the documents? Mike, so they need to have access to PMRS. That's the first thing. Once they gain access into PMRS, they should be added to that project. And in that specific role where they can upload the documents, so that's when they could. Did that answer your question?
Yes, as a municipal engineer, I only have a viewer, need to have access just in case.
Yeah, once you are added as an engineer, LPA role as an engineer for a specific project, you should be able to go in and upload the documents.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's right, Brian. Yep, documents outside our process. Okay. Not specific to David. You want to take on this? Like regarding uploading documents outside of a process, will participants be notified of the upload?
So by default, they will not be notified of the upload. However, there is a subscription that you can do. You can subscribe to a particular folder of the project that you're on, and basically anything that happens within that folder, whether somebody uploads a document, views a document, checkouts a document, whatever happens within that folder, you will then be notified. But that subscription has to be set up, and your eBuilder admins can help assist with that setup.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
And just to let you know, it is pretty simple. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you say you want to know everything that happens in this new documents, within the new documents, up here on the top, whatever document you have, folder you have selected in bold, up here at the top, you'll see a subscriptions link. If you click that subscriptions link, a separate window will pop up that shows you can subscribe and your subscription type, whether you want to receive a summary at the end of every day of everything that happened within that folder, or do you want an instant notification of as soon as somebody uploads that document or views the document, something like that within that folder. You can do that. You can also include the subfolders. So I had new documents selected. It's got all these subfolders. So if I include subfolders, that means anything that happens within all of these folders, I'm going to get notified for. So that's a subscription there.
Thank you, David. All right, I think if no other questions, I think we thank you all for coming in for today's session. Hope it's been helpful for all of you, and we will share the the acronyms that was requested and with the description of what the process is, like and we'll share that and distribute. Again, thank you again, and thank you, David, Vicente. So have a good rest of your day.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.